Hey, what's up everybody? Chris here, and today I wanted to make a video that really attempts to do two different things. So, Game of Thrones now has concluded, the series is over, and I think for a lot of fans, there's still kind of this sense of not really having closure, or at least not having the closure that people were expecting or wanted, or maybe thought was going to be sort of coming around the corner as they got to the conclusion of the series. So, there are two big questions that I want to try and address. One is, if I had to quantify or put a score or a rating on the series as a whole, what would that look like? And the reason I want to try and do this is because, again, after investing years into watching this show and kind of expecting, I don't know if I want to say a certain outcome, but expecting a little more finality to it that I think, for a lot of people isn't quite there, myself included, I feel like I need to have some kind of summation to this, some kind of summary. What is my takeaway? How do I articulate that? What does that mean? And in addition to that, I want to try and answer a question that a lot of people may have who have never seen the series, which is, now that it's over, should you take the time to sit down and essentially binge watch all 8 seasons, now that they're available to do that with? So I'm going to try and address both of those things here. And I think I'll just start by trying to score the series as a whole. So, I'm using a 1 to 10 scale, or really a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being unwatchable, 10 being a masterpiece. And so when I take a step back and look at the series as a whole, it started out phenomenally well. For full disclosure, I kind of jumped into Game of Thrones when it was maybe toward the end of the 3rd season. My youngest son had just been born, and I was up until all hours of the night trying to get him to go to sleep. And so I needed something to watch, and that's when I got into Thrones. And so I really binge watched the first 2 to 3 seasons. Again, I think it was around the end of season 3 when I got into it. But I can vividly remember, like a lot of people I imagine, making it through season 1 or getting toward the end of season 1 and reaching that point where, and I guess I should say spoilers here. This is going to be kind of spoilery if you've never seen it, but I'm going to say it anyway, so if you want to just skip ahead, I'll put some timestamps in the description so you can see where things are happening here. But a quick spoiler, when you get toward the end of season 1 and you get to that moment where Ned Stark is beheaded, a major character in a show is just killed, really kind of unexpectedly for a lot of people, people who had not read the books, I should say. That is what hooked me into the show. That is what told me, okay, this show really isn't afraid to do unexpected things, drastic things, extreme things, to create a really brutal world that we want to buy into as viewers and to keep us hooked. And so from that moment on, I was really hooked into the show. Again, made it through the next couple of seasons. The Red Wedding was another episode that just caused me, I can remember this vividly. I had my then, maybe 1 month old son, if not even that old, in my arms. It was something like 2 or 3 a.m. He wouldn't go to sleep. I was watching the Red Wedding episode. I was a little bit sleepy. But I remember when the end of that episode occurred, I just jumped up and I had my 1 month old in my arm, and I was just sort of looking around like, did anybody else see that? But of course, nobody else saw it because my wife was asleep, our older son was asleep, and he's not allowed to watch it. But that just furthered my, devotion to the show and my desire to keep watching it. And as the seasons went on, it did a really good job of keeping us hooked. I think when we got to season 7, and we get to the point where we're not having the same number of episodes, there may be some longer episodes, but not the same number each season. That's when things started to wobble a little bit for me. And then, you've seen some of my thoughts if you've seen the other videos with season 8. While, from a filmmaking point of view, I think season 8 is beautiful and some of the best television ever, I think story-wise, it really started to falter. And if you saw my review of the finale, I just was not happy with the way it ended. But the question then becomes, overall, how do you score that? I would say overall that the journey is worth it. Even if, and again, this is one person's opinion. Some people love the ending. Some people love the conclusion. So this is just me and how I feel about it. And as someone who does write from time to time, I've written a novel that's available on Amazon. Something that I self-published, but I did write it. It took a couple of years to do that. It's a close to 300-page science fiction novel. I teach writing. I teach poetry. I've written poetry. So from a writer's perspective, there are some choices with the final season that I just really didn't agree with regarding the characters that people were invested in, the way the story unfolded, that sort of stuff. But again, that's just me and one perspective. But overall, I would say that the show really does deserve a score of 9 out of 10. I think you can make the argument that, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a second, not sticking the landing is a big deal, given that the show really is all about building toward what we can only assume is going to be an epic conclusion. And in a lot of ways, it was an epic conclusion. It just, again, for me, wasn't very satisfying, and it didn't have the finality I wanted. But I would give the show overall a 9 out of 10. If the final episode even, not even the whole final season, but if the final episode had been a little bit better and had done something that maybe would have brought that sense of fulfillment or satisfaction to viewers, I maybe could have even given it a 10. But just based on the merit of everything that comes before it, based on the journey that you're taking on, and based on the level of production value, coffee cups and water bottles aside, that you get with the show, I think giving it a 9 out of 10 is a fair score. And so I do think it's worth seeing if you've never seen it before. So the question then, again, kind of coming back to that is, should you sit down and binge watch it? I think yes, especially if you've managed to avoid most of the spoilers, right? And so I'll put another, timestamp in the description just to make that clear, where I'm kind of jumping back into it. But if you have avoided spoilers and you don't know a whole lot about the show, but you're interested in binge watching it now that it's finished and you've got the ability to do that, I do think it's worth it overall. Again, I don't want to say a whole lot else if you're just jumping into the video at this point and don't know much else about the show or the story or how things conclude, but I would say overall it is, worth watching. Even though it's not flawless and there are some issues there, it's worth it. So overall score, 9 out of 10. Having had some time to reflect a little bit since Sunday on how things concluded, I still am not happy about it, honestly. But when I look at the show as a whole, I don't feel like I necessarily wasted time. It kept me hooked. I think having that experience of waiting each week to see what was going to happen, and having that water cooler talk, and I think that's part of the magic of the show, and it may be hard to duplicate that, of course, now that it's over and you're, if you're watching this and you're thinking about binge watching it, you won't have that experience of going to work or going to hang out with friends and just sort of speculating about what's going to happen with it. So that component of it's gone, and that's part of the magic of this show in particular, I think. But overall, I would say it's worth the journey. So that's my thought on overall the series of Game of Thrones. I give it a 9 out of 10. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe. Let me know what you think. If you had to give a score on a scale of 0 to 10 to this show, now that you've seen it in its entirety, what would that be? Am I off base? Do you agree with me? Just let me know. I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with more content. Thanks.